Right now, someone smarter than most people is sitting still while someone less intelligent keeps moving ahead. And that uncomfortable truth is where this story begins, because the world today is filled with fast thinkers, quick learners, and people who can understand complex ideas in seconds, yet progress feels slow, results feel distant, and success seems strangely disconnected from intelligence itself. And that is not an accident, but a pattern repeated across schools, careers, and creative work, where people with sharp minds often struggle more than expected, while others with average ability quietly build momentum. And the reason is deeper than motivation or luck, because modern life rewards a very different skill than raw thinking power, a skill that rarely gets taught, but silently decides who rises and who stays stuck. And throughout this video, you will uncover why high intelligence can secretly create pressure, confusion, and delay instead of progress, why having more knowledge sometimes leads to less action, and why the smartest generation in history often feels the most lost, surrounded by endless information, endless tools, endless advice, yet unsure what to do next. And this is not just a personal struggle, but a global shift in how people learn and perform, where constant exposure to ideas creates an illusion of growth without real change, where fast understanding tricks the brain into feeling productive even when nothing meaningful moves forward. And while many believe intelligence guarantees success, research and real-world patterns reveal that execution, clarity, and simple thinking patterns often outperform complex intelligence over time, which explains why some people with impressive mental ability still feel behind, while others build steady progress through small, clear actions. And as this video unfolds, you will learn the hidden mental traps that affect intelligent people the most, including how overthinking slows decisions, how perfectionism hides inside smart goals, and how modern learning habits encourage collecting information instead of transforming it into results. And these are not obvious problems, because they look like strengths at first. Fast thinking feels powerful, deep analysis feels responsible, constant learning feels productive. But slowly those habits create invisible friction that blocks movement, and understanding this shift changes everything, because once you see how intelligence can work against you, you begin to recognize the real skill that separates thinkers from achievers, a skill based on simplicity, clarity, and practical action, rather than mental speed alone. And this video will walk you through the reasons intelligent people sometimes struggle with direction, why clarity matters more than complexity, and how small changes in thinking style can unlock real progress without forcing you to become someone else. And along the way, you will hear lesser-known insights about how the brain reacts to too many options, why knowledge without structure creates mental noise, and why many smart individuals unknowingly build systems that slow their own growth. And the most important part comes later in the video, where everything connects and reveals a perspective that changes how you measure intelligence itself, because the goal is not to become smarter, but to become effective, not to collect more ideas, but to make ideas usable. And if you stay until the end, you will understand why intelligence alone changes nothing unless it is shaped into clear action, and why the difference between feeling capable and actually moving forward is smaller than most people think. And this message may feel uncomfortable at moments, because it challenges the belief that being smart should automatically lead to success. Yet that discomfort is where real clarity begins, because the truth is simple: the world does not reward thinking alone, it rewards applied understanding. And once that shift becomes clear, progress starts to feel lighter instead of heavier, more focused instead of overwhelming. And that is exactly what this channel is about: breaking down complex ideas into simple understanding, so you can move forward with confidence instead of confusion. So if you want to see intelligence from a new angle, and learn why so many capable people feel stuck, even when they know so much, stay with this video until the final moments, because the biggest realization comes at the end. Welcome to our channel, and if you value clear thinking, honest insight, and content that helps you grow step by step, make sure to subscribe and be part of this journey. For a long time, society has repeated the same quiet belief that success belongs to the smartest person in the room, the one who speaks quickly, learns fast, and understands complex ideas without struggle. And this belief feels logical because intelligence looks powerful from the outside. Yet when real stories are examined closely, the pattern starts to shift in a way most people do not expect, because many individuals praised as brilliant were not obsessed with sounding advanced, but with making ideas clear enough to use in daily life. And their strength was not confusion wrapped in big words, but clarity shaped through simple thinking. While today the world often celebrates complexity as proof of intelligence, long explanations, heavy terms, and endless layers of analysis give the impression of depth, even when the core idea remains unclear. And this has slowly created a culture where people chase intellectual appearance more than understanding itself, leading many intelligent minds to build complicated mental structures that look impressive but feel heavy to carry. And when thinking becomes heavy, action becomes slow. And when action becomes slow, progress starts to fade, even though intelligence remains high, which creates a quiet contradiction that few people talk about openly, because admitting that intelligence alone does not guarantee movement feels uncomfortable in a world that praises smart labels so loudly. And over time, this myth grows stronger as people compare themselves to famous thinkers and assume that their success came purely from raw brain power, ignoring the quieter truth that many of those individuals spent more time simplifying ideas than making them complicated, breaking problems into small, clear pieces instead of stacking theories on top of each other. And this difference between clarity and complexity becomes even more important today, because modern intelligent people live in an environment filled with constant information, endless videos, fast explanations, and quick summaries that create a powerful illusion of understanding, where recognizing a concept feels almost identical to mastering it, even though the two are completely different experiences. And the brain reacts strongly to familiarity, giving a sense of comfort when it sees something it has seen before, which makes smart individuals especially vulnerable to mistaking recognition for deep knowledge, because their fast minds connect patterns quickly and create a feeling of confidence long before real understanding forms. And that confidence slowly becomes overconfidence, not in a loud or arrogant way, but in a quiet internal belief that the idea is already clear enough. So the mind moves on without testing or explaining it fully, leaving hidden gaps that only appear later when real action begins. And these gaps create friction that feels confusing, because the person still feels intelligent, still remembers the information, yet struggles to apply it smoothly. And this is where the illusion grows stronger, because mental speed can produce a powerful sense of progress even when nothing meaningful has changed. Scrolling through knowledge, listening to advanced discussions, or understanding complex frameworks can feel productive, but the brain often measures effort by how fast it processes ideas rather than how deeply it integrates them. And intelligent people are especially skilled at building internal explanations that sound complete inside their own minds, even when those explanations would fall apart if spoken out loud in simple language, which is why clarity becomes rare while complexity becomes common. And this shift does not happen suddenly, but slowly over time, as the brain learns to value speed over depth, recognizing patterns instead of rebuilding them, consuming instead of transforming. And because modern learning environments reward fast answers and quick understanding, many intelligent individuals grow comfortable with partial clarity, unaware that real mastery requires a slower process that feels less impressive at first. And this creates a strange situation where the smartest generation in history carries more information than ever before, yet struggles with execution more than expected, not because intelligence is weak, but because it creates shortcuts that bypass deep processing. And those shortcuts feel efficient in the moment, allowing quick progress through topics, yet they quietly reduce the brain's ability to simplify and apply ideas when real challenges appear, which leads to frustration that feels personal, even though it comes from a broader pattern shared by many people who think deeply. And the illusion becomes stronger when social environments reward intellectual appearance, where sounding advanced gains more attention than making things simple. pushing intelligent minds to protect their image by keeping ideas complex instead of breaking them down into clear steps, and over time this habit builds a distance between thinking and doing, because complex thinking often stays inside the mind while simple thinking naturally moves toward action, and this explains why history often highlights individuals who focused on clarity rather than complexity, people who preferred rebuilding ideas from basic principles instead of relying on intellectual shortcuts, because simplicity is not a lack of intelligence, but a sign that understanding has reached a deeper level. Yet in modern culture, simplicity is sometimes mistaken for weakness, which causes intelligent individuals to avoid it, even when it would help them move forward faster. And as this cycle continues, the brain starts to trust familiarity more than testing, assuming that seeing an idea multiple times equals mastering it, even though true mastery requires explaining it clearly, applying it repeatedly, and facing the discomfort of discovering confusion. And this discomfort is exactly what many intelligent people avoid without realizing it, because their mental speed allows them to move past confusion quickly by jumping to another concept, creating a loop where learning feels continuous, but understanding stays shallow. And this loop becomes stronger when overconfidence quietly protects existing beliefs, making it harder to notice knowledge gaps because the brain fills missing details automatically, giving the impression that everything connects smoothly. Yet when real pressure arrives, those missing details create hesitation that feels surprising, leading some individuals to question their intelligence, even though the real issue is the illusion created by familiarity. And this illusion is powerful because it hides behind genuine ability, making it difficult to recognize without slowing down intentionally. And slowing down often feels uncomfortable to intelligent minds used to moving fast, yet that slower process is where clarity begins to grow, because breaking ideas into simple language forces the brain to confront what it truly understands versus what it only recognizes. And many historical thinkers valued this process deeply, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they understood that simplicity transforms knowledge into usable tools, while complexity often keeps knowledge locked inside abstract thinking. And in today's world, this difference becomes more visible as intelligent people consume massive amounts of content daily, building wide mental libraries that feel impressive yet difficult to navigate. And the more ideas collected without deep processing, the heavier the mental load becomes, creating subtle pressure that slows decisions and increases doubt, even though the person still feels intellectually capable. And this pressure often leads to more analysis instead of action, reinforcing the belief that more thinking will eventually solve the problem, while in reality, the missing piece is often clarity, not intelligence, and clarity grows through reducing complexity rather than adding more layers, which challenges the common myth that deeper thinking always requires more complicated structures, because many breakthroughs happen when ideas become simple enough to explain clearly to someone else. And when that level of simplicity is missing, progress begins to stall even if the mind remains sharp. And this is why many modern intelligent individuals struggle more than expected, not because they lack ability, but because the environment encourages habits that create illusions of mastery, and those illusions feel safe because they protect confidence, yet they quietly slow growth by hiding the areas that need deeper attention. And as the cycle continues, the brain learns to associate familiarity with success, rewarding quick recognition instead of true understanding, which makes learning feel fast, but application feel heavy. And over time, the gap between knowing and doing grows wider, leaving intelligent people confused about why results do not match their potential, even though the answer lies not in increasing intelligence, but in changing how intelligence is used, shifting from complexity toward clarity, from recognition toward explanation, from speed toward depth. And this shift begins with noticing how easily the mind believes it understands something simply because it has seen it before, how quickly confidence rises when ideas sound familiar, and how quietly knowledge gaps remain hidden behind fast thinking, shaping a pattern where intelligence creates its own illusion, guiding people toward more information instead of deeper understanding. And as this pattern continues, the question naturally grows stronger. Why do modern intelligent people struggle more even when they have more access, more knowledge, and more tools than ever before? And the answer starts to unfold in the space between what feels clear and what truly is clear, where familiarity disguises itself as mastery, and mental speed disguises itself as progress, creating a silent challenge that only becomes visible when the mind slows down enough to see it. The moment a fast mind starts working, it begins to see more possibilities than most people notice. And at first, this feels like an advantage, because more options mean more creative routes, more strategies, and more ways to approach a problem. Yet this same strength slowly becomes heavy when every path looks equally important, because the brain keeps jumping from one idea to another, comparing outcomes, predicting risks, and searching for the perfect direction before taking even a small step. And instead of moving forward, the person remains still, not because they lack motivation, but because every decision carries too many layers of thought. And while others choose quickly and adjust later, the overthinking mind tries to design the perfect path from the start, turning simple choices into complex puzzles that never feel fully solved. And this pattern becomes stronger in environments filled with endless information, where each new piece of advice adds another possible route, making clarity harder to reach. And the brain starts to believe that more thinking will remove uncertainty, even though uncertainty is a natural part of progress. And slowly decisions begin to feel heavier than actions themselves, creating a strange pressure where starting feels harder than planning, and planning becomes a safe space where the mind feels active without facing the risk of failure, because thinking gives the illusion of control, while action introduces unpredictability. And this is where perfectionism quietly enters, not always as a loud desire to be flawless, but as a subtle hesitation that waits for the ideal moment, the perfect idea, or the complete understanding before moving forward. And this waiting feels responsible and intelligent on the surface, yet it delays progress in ways that are difficult to notice, because the person still feels busy inside their own mind, reviewing details, adjusting plans, and refining strategies long after the moment for action has passed. And over time, the brain becomes comfortable living in preparation mode, building systems that look organized yet never fully come to life. And the difference between thinking and doing grows wider, not because the person cannot act, but because action feels incomplete compared to the detailed vision inside their head. And as this gap grows, confidence begins to depend more on internal plans than on real-world feedback, which makes it harder to break the cycle, because every unfinished plan feels like proof that more thinking is needed, even though the real solution is often a simple step forward. And this overthinking trap affects intelligent individuals strongly because their minds move fast enough to create endless alternatives, each one convincing enough to delay commitment to a single direction. And as days pass filled with planning, researching, and reorganizing ideas, the brain rewards itself with a sense of productivity even when nothing external has changed, reinforcing the habit of staying in thought instead of stepping into action. And while this pattern continues, another quiet issue begins to form beneath it, a difference between thinking ability and daily structure, because intelligence can generate ideas quickly, but discipline grows through repeated behavior. And many bright people assume that strong thinking will naturally lead to consistent action, yet thinking and doing operate through different systems inside the brain, one driven by curiosity and the other by routine. And when routine is weak, intelligence alone cannot maintain progress, leaving individuals with powerful ideas but unstable habits, starting projects with excitement but losing rhythm as soon as the initial interest fades. And this creates a cycle where motivation rises and falls without a steady foundation, making progress feel unpredictable even when ability remains high. And daily structure begins to show its quiet importance, not as a restriction, but as a container that allows intelligence to move in a clear direction, because without Without structure, a fast mind spreads energy across too many goals, chasing new interests while older commitments slowly fade, and this pattern can feel frustrating because the person understands what needs to be done, yet struggles to maintain consistent behavior, leading to a gap between knowledge and results that feels confusing from the inside. And many intelligent individuals begin to question their discipline without realizing that their habits were never designed to support their mental speed, creating a mismatch between capability and routine. And this mismatch becomes more visible in modern environments where constant stimulation encourages quick shifts in attention, making it easy to start new ideas but difficult to stay with one long enough to see real progress. And as habits become unstable, the brain relies more on bursts of motivation instead of steady systems, creating a pattern of intense focus followed by long pauses, and each pause increases the pressure to restart perfectly, feeding perfectionism and overthinking at the same time. And beneath all of this lies another layer shaped by how learning itself has changed, because modern learning often rewards collecting information rather than transforming it, encouraging people to watch, scroll, save, and gather endless ideas without rebuilding them in their own words. And this passive style of learning feels efficient because exposure happens quickly, yet the brain does not fully integrate what it only observes, leaving knowledge floating at the surface instead of becoming part of clear thinking. And intelligent individuals are especially skilled at understanding ideas quickly, which makes passive learning feel even more effective. Yet without active rebuilding, understanding remains fragile, breaking apart when faced with real application, and explaining ideas becomes the moment where this fragility appears, because turning knowledge into simple language exposes gaps that recognition alone cannot reveal. And many people avoid this step not intentionally, but because it feels uncomfortable to slow down and confront confusion, especially when they are used to moving quickly through information, and as a result they continue collecting ideas instead of reshaping them, building a large library of concepts that feel familiar but remain difficult to use. And this pattern creates a backward learning process where consumption replaces creation and watching replaces practicing, leaving intelligent minds full of ideas yet uncertain about how to turn those ideas into action. And the more information collected without transformation, the heavier thinking becomes, increasing the urge to plan more carefully and delaying execution even further. And this loop connects back to overthinking because the brain tries to organize the growing library of knowledge before acting, searching for perfect clarity before taking imperfect steps. And while this search feels logical, it quietly blocks the learning that comes only through real-world feedback, because action reveals gaps faster than endless analysis. Yet modern habits encourage analysis to continue indefinitely, and the brain learns to associate progress with understanding more content rather than applying what it already knows, creating a cycle where intelligence feeds itself without producing visible change. And over time, this cycle shapes identity, making individuals feel like thinkers rather than doers, comfortable inside ideas but hesitant outside them. And this hesitation grows stronger when mistakes feel like threats to intelligence, pushing people to stay within familiar knowledge instead of risking imperfect action. And slowly the gap between thinking and doing becomes a normal part of life, accepted as personality rather than recognized as a pattern that can shift. And as this pattern deepens, even simple tasks begin to feel heavy because the mind sees too many possibilities behind each decision, weighing outcomes long before action begins, turning movement into analysis. While the absence of strong habits leaves no steady rhythm to break the cycle, and learning continues to move in the wrong direction, focused on gathering rather than rebuilding, on watching rather than explaining, on planning rather than executing, creating a quiet struggle where intelligence feels active yet progress remains distant, and the mind keeps searching for clarity through more information instead of discovering that clarity often appears only after action begins, when ideas are tested, explained, and reshaped through real experience rather than endless thought. There is a quiet difference that separates people who constantly move forward from those who remain trapped inside their own thoughts, and it does not come from speaking faster or knowing more complex words, but from a simple habit that often goes unnoticed, the habit of removing confusion instead of adding layers to it, because true high performers rarely try to prove how intelligent they are through complicated explanations. They focus on making ideas lighter, clearer, and easier to use, and this approach changes how their thinking feels from the inside, turning heavy concepts into simple steps that can actually be followed, while many intelligent individuals unintentionally do the opposite by building ideas that sound impressive yet remain difficult to apply, and over time this creates a gap between appearing smart and being effective, where one person explains things in a way that sounds advanced, while another quietly simplifies the same idea until it becomes practical, and simplicity begins to show its real strength, not as a reduction of depth, but as the result of deep understanding, because when an idea becomes clear enough to express in plain language, it stops being abstract and starts becoming useful. And this usefulness changes how decisions are made, because clarity reduces hesitation, while complexity increases doubt, and high performers naturally move toward clarity because they value movement over appearance. They care less about how ideas sound and more about how ideas work, which is why their thinking often feels calm rather than heavy, direct rather than scattered. And this calmness does not come from knowing less, but from removing unnecessary noise that slows the mind down. And when complexity disappears, the brain no longer needs to carry multiple layers of interpretation, allowing attention to focus on the next action instead of endless analysis. And this shift may look small from the outside, but it changes everything internally, because the mind stops trying to impress and starts trying to understand, and understanding brings a different kind of confidence, one that comes from clarity rather than intellectual image, and many people struggle to adopt this approach because modern culture quietly rewards sounding intelligent, encouraging long explanations, technical language, and complicated frameworks that signal depth even when they hide confusion, and intelligent individuals often feel pressure to maintain that image, believing that simplicity will make them appear less capable. Yet the opposite is often true, because the ability to express complex ideas simply shows a level of understanding that complexity alone cannot reveal. And when ideas become clear, they naturally lead to action, because the brain no longer needs to translate heavy concepts into practical steps, and this is where intelligence begins to transform into real effectiveness, shifting from internal thinking toward external progress. And this transformation starts with letting go of the need to identify as a high IQ person, because chasing that label creates a hidden trap, encouraging comparison instead of growth. And when identity becomes tied to intelligence, mistakes begin to feel threatening, pushing the mind to stay inside familiar thinking rather than exploring new actions, while focusing on clarity changes the goal entirely, making understanding more important than appearing smart. And this change feels subtle but powerful, because it removes the pressure to prove intelligence and replaces it with the freedom to learn openly, to simplify without fear, and to rebuild ideas in ways that actually make sense. And as clarity becomes the new measure, thinking naturally slows down in a healthy way, not as a loss of ability, but as a shift toward deeper processing, allowing ideas to settle and connect in practical ways. And this deeper processing creates a foundation for action loops, small cycles where thinking leads to doing, doing leads to feedback, and feedback leads to clearer thinking again. And these loops replace endless planning with steady movement, creating progress that feels real instead of imagined. And high performers rely on these loops because they understand that clarity grows through expression, through speaking, writing, explaining, or building, rather than through silent analysis alone. And expression forces the mind to organize ideas into simple forms, revealing confusion quickly and guiding the next step naturally, while avoiding expression keeps knowledge abstract and distant. And many intelligent individuals hesitate to express their ideas openly because they want them to feel complete first, yet completeness often appears only after expression begins, when rough thoughts become clearer through use. And this is why shifting from smart to effective requires a change in how learning feels, moving away from collecting information toward shaping it actively, turning passive understanding into visible action, and as this shift continues, the brain begins to value clarity more than speed, recognizing that fast thinking is useful only when it leads somewhere concrete, and the need to sound impressive slowly fades, because results start to speak louder than explanations, and with each cycle of clear thinking and action, confidence grows in a different way, not from knowing everything, but from being able to move forward despite uncertainty, and this confidence feels lighter because it does not depend on maintaining an image of intelligence. It depends on the ability to simplify, to adapt, and to express ideas in ways that others can understand, and over time the difference between smart and effective becomes more visible, because effectiveness leaves a trail of finished steps, while intelligence alone often remains invisible inside thoughts, and this visibility changes motivation as well, making progress feel more rewarding than planning, and turning simplicity into a habit rather than a temporary strategy. And as the mind learns to remove complexity again and again, decisions become faster without feeling rushed, actions become clearer without feeling forced, and understanding begins to grow through real experience rather than endless theory, creating a rhythm where ideas flow naturally into execution, and execution shapes clearer ideas in return, forming a continuous movement that feels stable instead of overwhelming. And this stability does not require lowering intelligence, but guiding it toward clarity, allowing the brain to use its speed in service of simple understanding rather than endless complexity. And when clarity becomes the focus, even difficult concepts start to feel approachable, because they are broken down into smaller parts that the mind can handle without pressure, and this process reduces overthinking without removing depth, showing that simplicity and intelligence are not opposites but partners when used correctly. And as more intelligent individuals begin to shift toward effectiveness, they notice that their mental energy feels less scattered, their decisions feel less heavy, and their learning feels more personal, because they are no longer repeating information but reshaping it in their own words. And reshaping ideas creates ownership, making knowledge feel alive rather than distant, and this ownership encourages continued expression, continued action loops, and continued growth, where intelligence becomes a tool instead of an identity, and clarity becomes a direction instead of a destination, guiding each step forward without the need for complicated frameworks or endless preparation, allowing progress to unfold naturally through simple, clear thinking that turns understanding into movement again and again without pause. The truth feels heavy at first, because many people grow up believing that intelligence is the ultimate advantage. Yet the world today is full of smart individuals who still feel stuck, not because they lack ability, but because clear thinking has quietly become rare, buried under noise, speed, and endless complexity. And once this becomes visible, a different perspective begins to form, one that removes blame from your mind and places attention on your approach instead, because your brain was never the real obstacle. The real obstacle was the habit of overloading it, rushing it, and measuring progress by how much you know, rather than how clearly you can use what you know. And when that shift starts to settle in, pressure slowly fades, because success stops feeling like a race to become smarter and starts feeling like a process of becoming clearer, calmer, and more direct with your thinking. And this change does not require dramatic transformation or perfect discipline. It begins with small adjustments, simplifying ideas, expressing thoughts openly, and choosing action even when everything does not feel complete yet. And over time, these small changes reshape how progress feels, turning confusion into direction and turning heavy thinking into light movement. And the hard message hidden inside all of this is simple but powerful. Intelligence alone will never carry you forward if clarity is missing, but clarity can turn even ordinary ideas into powerful results. And once you understand that difference, you stop chasing complexity and start building momentum, one clear step at a time. And that momentum is what truly separates people who stay stuck from people who keep growing, not because they are smarter, but because they think in a way that allows them to move. And if this message made you pause and see your own thinking from a new angle, then this channel was created exactly for you. you, a place where complex ideas become simple, where growth feels honest, and where every video is designed to help you move forward with more clarity and less noise. So if you want more content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this reminder today, because sometimes one clear idea is enough to change the direction of an entire journey, and the next video might be the one that helps you take that step.